Billahi ta'ala. Correct your intentions. I ask Allah to make this easy for me and for you. So we're going to start Surat An-Nisaa today. Surat An-Nisaa. Nice style. Switched up on us. You know, Fatiha, you got feel for Surat Al-Baqarah, very heavy. Surat Al-Imran, also, mashallah. And now here we are, Surah An-Nisa, a lot of rules, ahkam, fiqh. We're still in Juz of 4. And so the author says, starting with the word of God, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة. O people of Mecca, fear the punishment of your Lord by obeying him. He who created you from Adam, a single being. Ya ayyuhan nas, O people. So according to Jalalain, that's O people of Mecca. But the tafsir of An-Nasafi tends to leave this open, where the tafsir of Jalalain frequently says this is reference to the people of Mecca. Tafsir of An-Nasafi doesn't say anything. Sometimes says so, but a lot of the times doesn't. So that, O people of Mecca, that's according to Jalalain. Ittaqu rabbakum, fear your Lord, fear the punishment of your Lord by obeying him, which is foremost by worshiping him. That's the first obedience. Alladhi khalaqakum min nafsin wahida. He who created you from a single being, Adam, alayhi salatu wassalam. وَخَلَقَ مِنْهَا زَوْجَهَا, and created from that being Eve, its mate, the mate of that being. زَوْجَهَا. So this pronoun, ha, that's feminine pronoun, refers back to the nafs, the self, which is translated here as being. He who created you from a single self, that self is Adam. وَخَلَقَ مِنْهَا زَوْجَهَا, and he created from that self's mate. So that's why it says it here. And he created from that being Eve, its mate. وَبَثَّ مِنْهُمَا رِجَالًا كَثِيرًا وَنِسَاءً, and he spread from those two many men and women. Billions, subhanallah. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ الَّذِي تَسَاءَلُونَ بِهِ, and fear Allah, the one by whom you implore each other. I have to review how to explain that though. وَالْأَرْحَامِ, and be cautious about severing the ties with the relatives, the Muslim relatives. It's obligatory to keep ties with the Muslim relatives. And the one who cuts ties with his Muslim relatives is cursed if he doesn't have an excuse. You'll see ayat from the Quran about that. Cursed means banished from God's mercy, or damned if you want. Inna Allah kana alaykum raqiba. Surely over you Allah is raqib, witness or knowledgeable about you. وَآتُوا الْيَتَامَى أَمْوَالَهُمْ, and give the orphans their properties upon reaching puberty. Before puberty, you're going to be in control of that money, taking care of it, not using it for yourself. وَلَا تَتَبَدَّلُوا الْخَبِيثَ بِالطَّيِّبِ, Do not substitute the wretched for the good. The wretched is the haram money, the orphan's money in this context. Don't substitute that for the good halal money, your own money. Who's the orphan, by the way? The yatim. Who's the yatim? That we translate as orphan. That's really a loose translation. Yatim is the one whose father died in particular, and he's prepubescent. The prepubescent child whose father died. That's yatim. Orphan in English language is not that specific. So that's why it's loose translation. وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا أَمْوَالَهُمْ إِلَىٰ أَمْوَالِكُمْ. And do not consume their properties in addition to your own properties. Or you could translate that as monies. Do not consume their monies in addition to your own monies. Don't forget, the money is anything with monetary value. So all of your clothing, that's money. And whatever else you have. Your car, that's money. Your plants, that's money. Your house, etc., etc., etc. Your animals. وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا أَمْوَالَهُمْ إِلَىٰ أَمْوَالِكُمْ. Do not consume their properties in addition to your own properties. إِنَّهُ كَانَ حُوبًا كَبِيرًا. Surely it is a big sin. When this was revealed, they felt that being an orphan's guardian was burdensome, while some of them had from 8 to 10 wives without treating them fairly. How could this be? Because not all of the rules were revealed at once to the Prophet ﷺ. And before the Prophet came, the Arabs used to have more than 4 wives sometimes. And not just the Arabs, others too. Islam came and limited it to 4 wives. SubhanAllah. To limit it to 1 wife, though, is unjust. That's the kuffar. They are the unjust ones. So for your information, if a non-Muslim man has more than 4 wives, that's valid. Because the rule is, we recognize the non-Muslim marriage. What they consider marriage, we consider it marriage. And what they consider divorce, we consider divorce. But if this non-Muslim man who has more than 4 wives embraces Islam, then he becomes restricted. And he has to not keep more than 4. And he has to release the rest. So this kafir who has more than 4 wives, if he embraces Islam, Islam will not nullify his marriages. Rather, he becomes suspended here. And he becomes like off limits for him. Frozen asset. It's like frozen asset. And he can't keep more than 4. He has to release whatever's more than 4. He said, regarding marriage, is it only people of the book, or it extends to others, excluding the apostate? Others, all the kuffar. The evidence for that, one evidence for that, is that Allah says, وَامْرَأَتُهُ حَمَّالَةَ الْحَطَبِ. That's about Abu Lahab's wife. Imra'atuhu, that means his wife. So that means his marriage is recognized as a pagan here, not as a Christian or a Jew. So when this ayah was revealed about not taking the orphan's money, they felt that being an orphan's guardian was burdensome, while some of them had from 8 to 10 wives without treating them fairly. So Allah revealed, وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تُقْسِطُوا فِي الْيَتَامَى. If you fear to not be fair with the orphans, and you find their issue burdensome, then also fear unfairness with the women you marry. But that part is implied. That's why it's in parentheses. So if you just want to read what's translated without, or if you just want to translate without the You just want to translate without the parentheses. وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تُقْسِطُوا فِي الْيَتَامَى. And if you fear to not be fair with the orphans, فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُمْ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ. Then marry such women as seem good to you. So might scratch your head on that. What does that mean? How do you put those together? If you fear to not be fair with the orphans, then marry the women who seem good to you. What does this mean? So there's context behind it, which is what we just said. They felt it was burdensome to take care of the orphans while they weren't being fair to their wives. So Allah revealed this ayah. It has some implication in it though. وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تُقْسِطُوا فِي الْيَتَامَى. And if you fear to not be fair with the orphans, and you find their issue burdensome, then also fear unfairness with the women you marry. فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ. So marry such women as seem good to you. Meaning that they used to find a burden in taking care of the orphans and their money, but did not find a burden in the conquest of women. So Allah commanded them to find a burden in the conquest of women, like they find a burden in the guardianship of orphans. So let them get married. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. Or, yani, فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ. Marry what women are lawful for you. That's another way to explain it. مَا طَابَ لَكُم. طَابَ means to be good, to be nice. مَثْنَى وَثُلَاثَ وَرُبَاعَ. 2 by 2 and 3 by 3 and 4 by 4. So someone might get confused here. First of all, this is evidence that a man can marry up to 4 wives. مَثْنَى وَثُلَاثَ وَرُبَاعَ. 2 by 2, 3 by 3, and 4 by 4. But somebody might be confused here and say, only 4? 4 by 4 is, what do you say? What do you say 4 by 4 is? Is it 8? 16? No, it's not any of that. The meaning of 4 by 4 here is just 4 at a time. 4 at a time. That's what it means. So mathna, 2 by 2, that means 2 at a time. Wathulath, and 3 by 3, that means 3 at a time, not 6. Waruba, and 4 by 4, 4 at a time. The number is repetitive because the address is to every man who wants to have more than one wife. Yani, the number is repetitive means here, these 3 words, mathna, this one word, it literally means 2 by 2. Mathna means ifnan ifnan, ifnan ifnan. It means it's like ifnan ifnan, these 2 words, that means 2 by 2. It's like they morphed into one word and became mathna. And thulath also is thalatha thalatha. It's like it morphed into one word. Thulath, and same thing. Wa ruba' arba'a arba'a. So if you say they came 2 by 2, it doesn't really mean any limited number in particular. It just means they came 2 at a time. So that's the meaning of the ayah. Some swindler, he went to some people who are ignorant, went to a land of ignorant Muslims, and he told them that he could have more than 4 wives, and he gave them this ayah. فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا فَوَاحِدَةً. And right there too, appreciate how the Quran is very intellectual. This is profound here. Because maybe you're asking, was it 4? Is it 16? Is it 8? Is it 9? What? SubhanAllah. فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا فَوَاحِدَةٌ. But if you fear that you will not be fair in spousal support and giving turns, then marry only one. Because if you marry more than one, then each one has her rights, support, and turns. So if you fear that you will not be fair, then marry only one. This doesn't mean that marrying one is sunnah. We don't say marrying one woman is sunnah. And we don't say marrying more than one woman is sunnah also, with open statement like that. It's going to depend on the person's case. And the Prophet, he did have more than one wife. That's true. But we don't say open statement like this, that having more than one wife is sunnah. But also we don't say having one wife is sunnah. أَوْ مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ. Or suffice with what slave women your right hands possess. Yani, it's permissible for a man to have relations with his slave woman if she's not married. His unmarried slave woman. ذَلِكَ أَدْنَىٰ أَلَّا تَعُولُوا. That marriage to not more than 4. Or that marriage to not more than 1. Or that sufficing with slave women makes it more likely that you do not unjustly go awry, that you don't go astray, yani, that you don't go off course. Allah ta'ulu. That makes it more likely that you don't go off course. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. This issue of a man having more than one wife, don't let it be a touchy subject, whether you're a man or a woman, for any person. And whether you prefer it for yourself or you don't prefer it for yourself, don't let it be a touchy conversation with you, with any person. Don't let any person make you feel like you should be shy about it or something like that. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, He created men, He created women, and He knows their natures. And He made these rules out of His wisdom. And He made a way for a man to have more than one woman lawfully. And the non-Muslims, in their injustice, they made it, yani, as far as marriage is concerned, they made it unlawful for a man to have more than one wife. But they never made it unlawful for him just to have extramarital affairs all throughout his life with many, many women. If he had more than one wife, they would say he's such and such. And if he had so many women, then they would say he's something else that's good or praiseworthy to them. And not just that. Because of how they put their laws, then makes many men have to sneak and lie. And Muslim man, and if he stand up on his own feet and he's about his business, then he doesn't have to sneak or lie. If he's gonna marry another wife, he's gonna marry another wife, and then he's gonna tell his wife, inshallah. He tell his wife, for example. But he doesn't have to lie and cheat though, and sneak. I mean to say, it's not cheating. He doesn't have to lie and sneak. SubhanAllah. Rather, what he has to do is, since Allah gave him that permission, what he has to do is, if he wants to make that choice, he's going to have to deal with what's going to come with it. Which means he's going to have to deal with the emotions of his wife, for example, or anybody else. And maybe some non-Muslim men, they envy Muslim men for this. And some of them, those non-Muslim men, some of them, what do? They will have many women, and they throw their women in the face of their other women. That's how macho they are. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. And when it was that some were averse to accepting for their wives to share with them any of the dowry that they gave them, meaning it was that some of the Sahaba, their wives would want to share some of their dowry. He's the one giving her dowry in the first place. So she would want to share some of her dowry with him, and he would not want to accept from her any of that money. So some of them were averse to accepting for their wives to share any of their dowry with them. So Allah revealed, وَآتُوا النِّسَاءَ صَدُقَاتِهِنَّ نِحْلَةً, and give the women their dowries as a gift given in goodwill. Yani, that's an obligation. Gift here doesn't mean it's less than an obligation. But give that dowry cordially, in goodwill, not with a tight fist. فَإِن طِبْنَ لَكُمْ عَنْ شَيْءٍ مِّنْهُ نَفْسًا فَكُلُوهُ هَنِيئًا مَرِيئًا. Then if they gave, those wives of yours gave of their own goodwill a portion of it, a portion of the dowry to you, consume it delightfully and wholesomely, without fear of harm in the afterlife. You just can't take it from her, though. And her father can't take it from her. وَلَا تُؤْتُوا السُّفَهَاءَ أَمْوَالَكُمُ الَّتِي جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ قِيَامًا. And do not give the irresponsible ones your properties, which Allah has made for you a sustaining capital. Do not give the irresponsible ones your properties. That means their properties. The irresponsible ones. These ones here are the ones who reach puberty irresponsibly. How does he reach puberty irresponsibly? An example is like he reached puberty as an arsonist. Arsonist means he sets property on fire. So this one, don't give him his money. You're in charge of his money before he reached puberty, let's say. You're his parent. And then he was a very bad boy. SubhanAllah, he was an arsonist. He reached puberty, you don't give him his money. وَلَا تُؤْتُوا السُّفَهَاءَ أَمْوَالَكُمُ الَّتِي جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ قِيَامًا. Do not give the irresponsible ones your properties, their own properties that are in your charge. That's what it means. Amwalakum, your properties, means their properties that you have charge of. Allati ja'ala Allahu lakum qiyama, those properties which Allah has made for you a sustaining capital, that by which you sustain yourselves and your families. وَارْزُقُوهُمْ فِيهَا, and maintain them out of the profits of it. Yani, spend it on them. Don't give it to them, those irresponsible ones. وَاكْسُوهُمْ, and clothe them. وَقُولُوا لَهُمْ قَوْلًا مَعْرُوفًا, and say to them an agreeable saying. Give them the promise of handing over their properties if they are mature and responsible. This is the case if they reach puberty irresponsibly. If they reach puberty, though, responsibly and then became irresponsible after that, then you can't restrict them in their money. Only the Muslim judge can restrict them in his money. وَابْتَلُوا الْيَتَامَى حَتَّى إِذَا بَلَغُوا النِّكَاحَ, and test the orphans until they reach puberty. Orphans and even your own children who are not orphans. فَإِنْ آنَسْتُم مِّنْهُمْ رُشْدًا فَادْفَعُوا إِلَيْهِمْ أَمْوَالَهُمْ. Then, if you sense responsibility in them concerning money, hand over to them their properties. Are you going to test the child? Like if you're a farmer, you're going to test your son with some farming things. If you're a trader, you're going to test your son with, like, working at the cash register, for example, your son or daughter. Working at the cash register or something like that. Or working at the table, interacting with the people. Or if it's a girl, you might test her in taking care of the house, like keeping the food away from the mice and like this type of thing. فَإِنْ آنَسْتُم مِّنْهُمْ رُشْدًا فَادْفَعُوا إِلَيْهِمْ أَمْوَالَهُمْ. Then if you sense responsibility in them concerning money, hand over to them their properties. So, Yani, how's it going to happen? If this is your own child, then if your own child has money, this child didn't reach puberty, then you're just going to be in charge of that child's money. If you're the father, so I'm not talking about an orphan, if you're the father, then it would be permissible for you to spend this child's money on the child, and you could keep your own money. You'd be obligated to spend your own money on the child when the child doesn't have his own money, his or her own money. It's not like the wife. Even if the wife has more money than you still have to spend on it. And if somehow you became in charge of an orphan's money, then same thing. So once they reach puberty and they are mature, then you hand their money over to them. وَلَا تَأْكُلُوهَا إِسْرَافًا وَبِدَارًا أَن يَكْبَرُوا وَلَا تَأْكُلُوهَا إِسْرَافًا وَبِدَارًا أَن يَكْبَرُوا. And do not consume it extravagantly and out of haste to consume it before they come of age. Yani, you have charge of this child's money. It's a lot of money. So you can indulge, splurge, you can go on a spree. You want to spend up all this money as much as you can before this child reaches puberty and takes charge of his own money. So you can't do that. That's what Allah forbids here. Might be the case that somebody can't spend it all at once. It's too much and it's going to get caught. So he has to siphon it out. وَمَنْ كَانَ غَنِيًّا فَلْيَسْتَعْفِفْ. And any guardian who be rich, let him abstain altogether. Have your own money. Don't touch the orphan's money. وَمَنْ كَانَ فَقِيرًا فَلْيَأْكُلْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. And whoever were poor, let him eat what his work was worth. I can't explain that sentence though. فَإِذَا دَفَعْتُمْ إِلَيْهِمْ أَمْوَالَهُمْ فَأَشْهِدُوا عَلَيْهِمْ. Then when you hand over to them their properties, you are advised to call witnesses over them. That is, it's not obligatory to call witnesses over them. You can just give them their money. وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ حَسِيبًا. And sufficient is Allah as reckoner, yani the one who shall judge you. لِلرِّجَالِ نَصِيبٌ مِّمَّا تَرَكَ الْوَالِدَانِ وَالْأَقْرَبُونَ. For the men is a share of what the parents have left behind, as well as what the relatives leave. وَلِلنِّسَاءِ نَصِيبٌ مِّمَّا تَرَكَ الْوَالِدَانِ وَالْأَقْرَبُونَ. And for the women is a share of what the parents left behind, as well as what the relatives leave. مِمَّا قَلَّ مِنْهُ أَوْ كَثُرَ مِمَّا قَلَّ مِنْهُ أَوْ كَثُرَ نَصِيبًا مَفْرُوضًا. Whether there is little of it or much, a required portion for distribution. Yani, because the men those Arabs, they used to bully the women out of the inheritance, and the orphans too. They used to take all the inheritance. وَإِذَا حَضَرَ الْقِسْمَةَ أُولُو الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينُ فَارْزُقُوهُم مِّنْهُ. And when relatives who do not inherit, and the orphans, and the needy who are not relatives, are present at the allocation of the inheritance, the money is being distributed, provide for them from it. Yani, give them a charity. وَقُولُوا لَهُمْ قَوْلًا مَعْرُوفًا. And say to them an agreeable saying, a gentle rejection, and a nice promise. That's how you turn the beggar away. Allah commands us in the Quran to turn a beggar down gently, nicely. وَلْيَخْشَ الَّذِينَ لَوْ تَرَكُوا مِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّةً ضِعَافًا خَافُوا عَلَيْهِمْ. And let have fear for the orphans. Those who, had they left behind weak offspring, they would fear for them. This means you're in charge of an orphan. It's not your child, eh? Well, think about your own child. How would you feel if you had a weak offspring? Just for example, a little baby you can't take care of him or herself. What would happen to this baby if the caretaker of this baby, if something were to happen to the caretaker of this baby? How would you feel? You would feel very concerned. So Allah commands us. That's how you should feel for the orphans. Feel concerned for them like you would feel concerned for a weak offspring of yours whose caretaker passed away. SubhanAllah, what a comparison too. SubhanAllah wa bihamdihi. It's a perfect comparison. فَلْيَتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَلْيَقُولُوا قَوْلًا سَدِيدًا. So let them fear Allah and let them say a right saying, something correct. Let them say what is correct. This is mentioned in the Quran in more than one spot. Say what is right. Don't say something wrong. Try to be accurate 100% of the time. إن الذين يأكلون أموال اليتامى ظلما إنما يأكلون في بطونهم نارا. Surely those who consume the properties of the orphans unjustly, they only swallow into their bellies what results in being tortured by fire. وَسَيَصْلَوْنَ سَعِيرًا. And they shall be inserted into a fire, lit ablaze by an inferno. They shall be inserted into a fire and lit ablaze by an inferno. سَيَصْلَوْنَ. That's how I found the meaning of Sali when I looked in the dictionaries and in the Tafsirs. The Sali. It means to put something in fire and then for it to catch fire. To put it into fire and then for it to catch fire. يُوصِيكُمُ اللَّهُ فِي أَوْلَادِكُمْ. Allah commands you concerning your children. Yani, Allah gives you the directives here. It is not up to your discretion. So, yani, hearken to this. لِلذَّكَرِ مِثْلُ حَظِّ الْأُنثَيَيْنِ. For the male is the share of two females. That's what Allah commands. The male inherits double that of the female. It's not because male is better. It's because he needs it more. Who's the one who needs the money most? The man needs the money most. That's a general statement. Because he's provider. فَإِن كُنَّ نِسَاءً فَوْقَ اثْنَتَيْنِ فَلَهُنَّ ثُلُثَا مَا تَرَكَ. But if they were women more than two, then theirs is 2/3 of what the deceased has left. Now, I'm not going to go into details about inheritance here. Here are the ayat about inheritance. Here in Surat An-Nisaa. So we're reading them now without any details. فَإِن كُنَّ نِسَاءً فَوْقَ اثْنَتَيْنِ فَلَهُنَّ ثُلُثَا مَا تَرَكَ. But if they were women more than two, then theirs is 2/3 of what the deceased has left. وَإِن كَانَتْ وَاحِدَةً فَلَهَا النِّصْفُ. And if she were alone, then half is hers. This is the daughter here. These are daughters we're talking about here. We say daughters, or we say any family member when you talk about inheritance. You always relate it back to the dead person. So it means daughters of the dead person, parents of the dead person, child of the dead person. Yusikumullahu fi awladikum. Allah commands you concerning your children, yani the inheritance, concerning the inheritance. لِلذَّكَرِ مِثْلُ حَظِّ الْأُنثَيَيْنِ. For the male is the share of two females, yani the brother is going to get double what his sister gets. فَإِن كُنَّ نِسَاءً فَوْقَ اثْنَتَيْنِ فَلَهُنَّ ثُلُثَا مَا تَرَكَ. But if they were women more than two, yani these sisters, then theirs is 2/3 of what the deceased has left. وَإِن كَانَتْ وَاحِدَةً فَلَهَا النِّصْفُ. And if she were alone, just a single daughter, then half is hers. وَلِأَبَوَيْهِ لِكُلِّ وَاحِدٍ مِّنْهُمَا السُّدُسُ. And for his parents, whose parents? Parents of the deceased. For each of them is a sixth. لكل واحد منهما السدس مما ترك إن كان له ولد. For each of them is a sixth of what he left if he had a child. Each parent gets a sixth if he, the deceased one, had a child. فإن لم يكن له ولد وورثه أبواه فلأمه الثلث. But if he did not have a child, and only his two parents inherit from him, then his mother has a third. So how are you going to get a good grasp of this? By memorizing it. This is not something based on reasoning. This is what Allah revealed. These rules, what Allah revealed. You have to memorize it. And of course, learn the science behind it, the science, the clockwork behind it, all the details. Then you're going to distribute the monies the way they're supposed to. فَإِن كَانَ لَهُ إِخْوَةٌ فَلِأُمِّهِ السُّدُسُ. But if he has brothers, who's he? The deceased one. Then his mother has a sixth. مِن بَعْدِ وَصِيَّةٍ يُوصِي بِهَا أَوْ دَيْنٍ. All of that is after the payment of a bequest he may have bequeathed. Yani, a will that he left, which is a gift after death. That's other than the inheritance. All these fractions we're talking about here, sixth, third, half, none of this is the will. That's the inheritance. In our religion, there's a difference between the will and the inheritance. The inheritance are these percentages that go to the relatives. The will is a gift after death to someone who doesn't inherit, without going into details. That's the original way. To someone who doesn't inherit. That's what's meant here by bequest, his will, which is his gift to someone after death. مِن بَعْدِ وَصِيَّةٍ يُوصِي بِهَا أَوْ دَيْنٍ. All of that is after the payment of a bequest he may have bequeathed, yani a will that he left for someone, or a debt that is paid before the bequest, or a debt that is paid before the bequest, even though the debt is mentioned here in the ayah after the bequest, still paid before. Has priority. He died with a debt, it has to get paid first. And there's debts to Allah and debts to the people. The debts to Allah include a Hajj that he was obligated to perform and he died before performing it, and a zakat that he was obligated to pay and he died before paying it. said the will is what? So did you get it? I repeated it a few times. It is a gift to someone after death. Yes. Someone who doesn't inherit. That's the original way. The heirs will get their shares. آباؤكم وأبناؤكم لا تدرون أيهم أقرب لكم نفعا. Your parents and your children, you know not which of them is closest to you in benefit. What does that mean? This means this is why the rules of inheritance are not left to your discretion. Because you don't know, you human beings, you don't know what's the better way by yourselves. It needs to be revealed to you to get the best outcome. So that's why these rules that are revealed right here, these percentages or fractions that are revealed, and the people who get them, you have to memorize them and adhere to that, learn the rules of inheritance, and then go according to that. And that's it. You have no discretion here. فَرِيضَةً مِّنَ اللَّهِ. This is ordained as an ordinance from Allah. إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَلِيمًا حَكِيمًا. Surely Allah was in eternity knowledgeable about everything before its creation, and wise about the obligations and the allotment of everything. وَلَكُمْ نِصْفُ مَا تَرَكَ أَزْوَاجُكُمْ إِن لَّمْ يَكُن لَّهُنَّ وَلَدٌ. And yours is half of what your wives left if they did not have a child. So you would take half of what your wife left if she didn't have a child. فَإِن كَانَ لَهُنَّ وَلَدٌ فَلَكُمُ الرُّبُعُ مِمَّا تَرَكْ. فَإِن كَانَ لَهُنَّ وَلَدٌ فَلَكُمُ الرُّبُعُ مِمَّا تَرَكْنَ. But if they had a child, then you get a fourth of what they left after payment. Then you get a fourth of what they left. مِن بَعْدِ وَصِيَّةٍ يُوصِينَ بِهَا أَوْ دَيْنٍ. After payment of any bequest they may have bequeathed, or a debt that is paid before the bequest. وَلَهُنَّ الرُّبُعُ مِمَّا تَرَكْتُمْ إِن لَّمْ يَكُن لَّكُمْ وَلَدٌ. And theirs, for those wives of yours, is a fourth of what you left behind if you had no child. فَإِن كَانَ لَكُمْ وَلَدٌ فَلَهُنَّ الثُّمُنُ. But if you had a child, then they get an eighth of what you left. مِمَّا تَرَكْتُم مِّن بَعْدِ وَصِيَّةٍ تُوصُونَ بِهَا أَوْ دَيْنٍ. After payment of a bequest you may have bequeathed, or a debt paid before the bequest. Yani, the will gets paid before the inheritance is distributed. The debt is paid before anything else, and then the will is paid, and then the inheritance is distributed. وَإِن كَانَ رَجُلٌ يُورَثُ كَلَالَةً أَوْ امْرَأَةٌ وَلَهُ أَخٌ أَوْ أُخْتٌ فَلِكُلِّ وَاحِدٍ مِّنْهُمَا السُّدُسُ. And if a man leaves property to be inherited while neither having parents nor offspring, so he doesn't have descendants nor ancestors, no parents, no offsprings, or a woman, وَلَهُ أَخٌ أَوْ أُخْتٌ, and he or she has a brother or sister, فَلِكُلِّ وَاحِدٍ مِّنْهُمَا السُّدُسُ, then for each of them is a sixth. فَإِن كَانُوا أَكْثَرَ مِن ذَلِكَ فَهُمْ شُرَكَاءُ فِي الثُّلُثِ. And if they were more than that, then they are partners in a third. مِن بَعْدِ وَصِيَّةٍ يُوصَى بِهَا أَوْ دَيْنٍ غَيْرَ مُضَارٍّ. After payment of any bequest that may have been bequeathed, or a debt paid after the bequest that is not harmful. The verse does not refer to a harmful debt, as the order of the words may seem to imply. The meaning is a will that is not harmful to the heirs by not granting more than 1/3 to someone, nor granting a gift to an heir. Yani, غير مضار, not harmful. It means don't leave a will that's a gift after death to someone who doesn't inherit of more than 1/3 of your money, because this will interfere with the shares of the heirs. This will interfere with the shares of the heirs. And don't leave a will for an heir, because the heir already has a share. وَصِيَّةً مِّنَ اللَّهِ. This is ordained as an ordinance from Allah. وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ حَلِيمٌ. And Allah is knowledgeable about who is just or unjust in His will. And He is Halim, not quickly punishing who is unjust. تِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ. Those are Allah's limits. All those rules. Yani, those rules pertaining to the orphans and the wills and the inheritance. وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ يُدْخِلْهُ جَنَّاتٍ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ. And whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger, He admits him into gardens beneath which flow rivers on the ground. خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا, forever abiding therein. وَذَلِكَ الْفَوْزُ الْعَظِيمُ. And that is the great triumph. وَمَنْ يَعْصِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ. And whoever disobeys Allah and His Messenger, وَيَتَعَدَّ حُدُودَهُ, and he goes beyond his limits, يُدْخِلْهُ نَارًا خَالِدًا فِيهَا, He commits him to a fire, forever abiding therein. So then, this is talking about the kafir, not just committing a major sin. وَلَهُ عَذَابٌ مُهِينٌ, and he shall have a humiliating torture. This is about the blasphemer who goes beyond all the limits, including the belief, as proven by the end of the verse confirming his everlasting stay in hell. This is not evidence that mere disobedience is blasphemy. صدق الله العظيم. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Do you have any question I can answer for you? Ameen wa fikum. Is this correct? The correct order, the money of the deceased is distributed, his will, his debt, his will, and then his inheritance. Yes, that's correct. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. Ameen wa fiq. أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.